Welcome to Fix and Fly, the business podcast, which identifies common business issues for you to watch out for in your day-to-day business life. So tune in every fortnight where we speak to leaders of corporates to SMEs where you can implement their strategies into your business. I'm your host, Larissa Logan from Fixity, where we help turn businesses around. Hi Dave, welcome to the Fix and Fly podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Cool, kia ora. Thank you for bringing me in. I was just saying before we got going that I am significantly underdressed compared to you today, so we'll have to bring some good content for you today.
Well, no, you're actually wearing the uniform of a tech person, I would say.
Well, if you think I look like I'm in the job, then I'll take it.
Do you mind telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and your journey to becoming the founder of SupaHuman?
I mean, for you guys that are listening, especially even small business, you're probably likely a founder anyway. You know, founder director of a business. So I'm one of 3 co-founders here at SupaHuman. After working in boring stale corporates for 20 years and realizing that there's an opportunity to create some value for the world, that we launched SupaHuman, which actually was not an idea. It was more of a opportunity that we saw where, you know, there was some amazing technology coming to the world called artificial intelligence. That's what we're kind of here to talk about today. And the country, we believed, needed a good custodian of that technology to help them realize the benefits of it and how you industrialize that technology to create outsized return for your business, for the country, and to free you from the tedious work that exists inside of your business. We think this technology has the ability to be faster, smarter, with more levels of creative accuracy than humans can provide for work that humans don't want to do. So can you help us build some cool stuff? And that's what we've been doing for the last 2 years.
In the tech space, it's moving so fast, right? So what was happening 6 months ago is so different today because of the tech moving so fast. Do you have a view on that and how you're kind of keeping up with those changes?
There's a lot of surface level material around, you know, the benefits of AI versus the cons of it, you know, the speed of which things are changing. There's definitely a position that we've got. There's also, we encourage people to push past that quite quickly. And a lot of things we see on social media and on news around AI, it's super surface level. And the reality is there are some significant businesses and small businesses that are putting their money to where their mouth is and just going, look, we've been here before. Technology has come and it's gone. Before computers, there were no computers. Before the internet, there was no internet. And those that tend to embrace these things first, regardless of speed of change, tended to create most value. Technology moves so quickly. If you move too quick, there is a risk of, you know, needing to backtrack investment because you go too quickly. But ultimately, the reward is so high on the other side, it's worth doing that. You can sit on the sidelines for a long time and the train never stops for you to get onto it.
I agree with that. And there are 600,000 SMEs in New Zealand, right? That makes up 97% of our businesses. A lot of those people don't come from a technology background. And I think they're quite cautious and nervous and don't feel like that they have the skill set to implement AI into their business. What advice would you give to those business owners?
We've been here before with technology adoption. You didn't have a website at one point. You didn't have an email account at one point. And it was hard 20 years ago, 30 years ago to kind of get online and become digitally proficient. It's now, you can spin a website up in a matter of minutes and you need no creative skill. You just need to know what your business does and all the technology kind of creates this for you.
It is unbelievable. I've actually built 3 websites in the last month, just using AI tools.
We're seeing 2 areas kind of come to light. So the first is consumer grade AI. So things like Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude by Anthropic, all of those, you'll hear those. Any conversation about AI, someone will have said those words. $20 a month, buy a license, treat it as a sidekick / assistant to help you get stuff done. Like very, very powerful. It is the best intern you've ever had who's got PhD level experience and you just work with that technology to kind of do stuff. Camp number 2 is where the needle shifts quite significantly. Where you've got a business that is wedded to human capital, essentially people doing stuff with their eyes and hands, which is normally computational. So they're writing reports or doing audits or filing for liquidation or you know, auditing accounts. The limit to doing that work is not the capability and the knowledge, it's how quickly you can read stuff and how quickly you can compute that into something that means something. It just so happens that's exactly what AI was built to do, which is consume at light speed and reason with that information to create some form of output and outcome. If you think about the application of that, what we've essentially done as a human race now is unshackle ourselves from our own biology, which in its simplest terms means I can only type so quickly and I can only read so fast. And how many businesses operate with that limit, how quickly they can read something and how quickly they can turn it into something else. If you can invest in taking the IP, that is taking one thing and turning it into something else that you monetize on the way through, and you can institutionalize that in technology versus people, you've got some really big opportunities. One is your cost to serve can essentially go down to zero. That's great. Your speed to execution can essentially go from weeks to seconds, which is great. And your price point remains the same because the value to your end customer is still as important. So you end up essentially being an opportunity to be a very significant first mover advantage to take your own IP, institutionalize it, and create those services that exist.
And that's amazing because the margin's there, right? The question I have for you is how about accuracy? Where are we at the moment with that process and the level of accuracy without a human in the loop?
Consumer grade intelligent services. So we spoke about those, the list of Copilot, ChatGPT, etc. What that essentially puts at your fingertips is the power to interact with the knowledge that AI has, which is world knowledge. It's massive. It knows pretty much everything that's publicly available.
Where does it get its knowledge from? Is it just kind of like trawling
pretty much
the internet?
It's pretty much the internet. I mean, there's weighted knowledge inside of those data sets that are either purchased by the AI providers and then embedded. So, for example, Google has an amazing advantage because it's got essentially access to every data point on the planet publicly available. But it also owns YouTube, so it's got every video on the planet as well, so it can transcribe all of that. Like it's got a huge amounts of data. But if I forget the AI for a second and I ask you about tax advice, you know that I'm a New Zealand citizen and you know we're in New Zealand right now. So therefore, the context of the advice you're going to give me is New Zealand tax law. Perfect. The AI doesn't know that, but it knows also the tax law of every country. So the reason that you would get an inaccurate result is that you don't provide enough context to these AI models to give you accuracy. And therefore, there's a huge amount of accuracy issues because the inputs from the human are just rubbish. That is the cause of a massive percentage of inaccuracy conversations. It's not the AI that's necessarily accurate. It's the fact that we're asking it dumb questions because it knows too much.
So does that kind of lead us into agents and prompts and creating for SME business owners to be able to automate some of their own internal processes easily? Is it the prompts that they put inside of their agents that will improve the accuracy of the output? Prompts
are one of probably 40 different methodologies to create accuracy and good guaranteed output. Nothing's guaranteed in terms of accuracy. And the reason for that is the data that a lot of these models are trained on is not wholly accurate. There's a conversation we had with a large wealth management company recently who wanted us to build a tax advice agent. But I said, how accurate can you get these AI services? We reckon we can get very, very high 90s, 98, 99% accuracy. And the question came back, well, why can't you get to 100? I said, well, we know we've read the income tax legislation and we know that there are errors in it. So how can we guarantee accuracy if the underlying legislation's got errors in it? And he was like, okay, that makes perfect sense. He then went, well, that's okay because I reckon my tax advisors are only 70% accurate anyway.
Crazy.
But makes perfect sense. As a human being, to go back to your biology, how do we expect a human to be able to get across 2,000 pages of income tax legislation that changes through case law around, adjustments and amendments over time and stay on top of that? You just can't. You can't do that.
A lot of people have concerns that AI is going to take over the world and people are going to lose their jobs. Do you have a view on that?
When we have the opportunity at our fingertips to reshape what humans do and contribute to the world, I can definitely see a world where we start to become more human because this technology is doing the tedious work that we don't want to do. Human purpose is a really interesting one. And I can get a little bit philosophical about this because the reality is there's an economic side of my brain that says people need to earn money. Like, that's a reality. But also the flip side to that is there is so much work that we're just not designed to do. I do think there'll be a workforce shift over the next 10 years, and those in knowledge work, which are, like I said, you're turning one thing into something else, but there is definitely going to be change there. Physical work, less concerned about. Like robotics is not at the same stage that knowledge intelligence is at. But ultimately, robotics is AI powered. But it's going to be a long time before diesel mechanics have got to worry about their roles, and builders, for example. That we're not at that stage yet.
It's interesting. I'm actually doing a lot of my legal documents at the moment online for free using AI generated tools, right? Yep. And I'm doing documents that I've used over the last 20 years in my career that I'm comfortable with the clauses, and then I'll run it past my legal advisor. So that's reduced the cost massively down for me. And so I feel like the next 10 years, I agree with you, we're going through the largest technological change in our lifetime. And if you are a business and you want to stay ahead of the curve, you need to implement AI and be looking at ways to be a value add business as opposed to having bums on seats doing the manual work.
A couple of words there that are really important. I think that we should unpack them. So implementing AI, that is a very interesting, confusing concept. Implementing technology historically has been an expensive game. We're doing a big digital transformation, built for enterprises do these big digital transformation pieces. It's implementing, AI, implementing the cloud, all these things that we've done, right? The reality is, to start that journey, whip your credit card out and spend $20 a month and just start to move. But the core thing that we see time and time again with businesses is that when you start to try and make the same thing go a lot faster, two things happen. One is you miss the opportunity because actually there's an opportunity to do things in a very different way. But also, if your current process within your business is, your humans are papering over the cracks of a bad process, you actually can't put that process on steroids because AI is going to take something that's good and amplify it to a great success. It will also take something that's bad and amplify it into chaos. So actually what we encourage businesses to do is say, what do you deliver that's valuable? How do you currently deliver it? And where are there humans in that chain of delivering that value? And then how do you remove the human from the loop? And then inject the human back in to manage quality and manage the value that your customers see value in, which isn't things like writing documents. It's actually presenting the value of those documents and being trusted in, a trusted brand.
That's some great advice. Do you have any other top tips for SME business owners?
I would encourage you to look at what's happening internationally within your sector as well. Classic use case, we had a customer come to us yesterday and say, hey, look, can we spend a significant amount of money with you building this thing? And we're like, yep. Or you can spend $500 a month over here for a company that's already solved this problem in the US. So we are quite quick to go, I need to build something in New Zealand, but that's kind of a good thing because we're used to kind of that mentality. But look internationally, there's bigger markets that have kind of already solved some of these problems. And using those technologies to kind of get competitive advantage is not a bad thing. There's always a build versus buy mentality. We encourage every business, small or large, to actually sit down with those individuals in your business that are, I'll call it, they have either fiduciary responsibility or they're very senior in the business to say, either the ones that really don't care whether they're going to be fired or hired, they're kind of in the circle of trust from an exec perspective, and go, guys, if we were going to start this business tomorrow, how would we do it? Or if we were going to start a competitor to our business, how would we cut ourselves off at the knees? Those conversations are epic.
I love that.
Well, we facilitate quite a lot of them. It's just really good. It's really good fun. Because you can sit back, chill with a beer, get some pizza and go, right, guys, let's figure out how we take ourselves out.
Just reimagine the business.
Reimagine the business.
Yeah.
That doesn't work for middle management. It doesn't work for the guys on the ground. It becomes a scary environment where they can read the tea leaves about what they're trying to do. But what it does do, it gets everyone into a mindset of going, no, actually, there's an opportunity here. And, it creates value for the shareholders of the business, which is ultimately what directors are there to do. That's what their responsibility is, for safe execution of business and creating value for shareholders. And if you can get management that understand the organization, design what the future can look like by, just thinking out of the box, like, well, why do we do that process that way? And why does it take us 6 weeks to do this thing when we can smell that it could be done a lot quicker through using some technology? At that point, we kind of swing in with you and validate, yes, that can be done. No, it can't be done. And how do you want to unlock that? What that's materialized in for a good handful of our customers is brand new product. I mean, they've taken a traditional services business and turned it into a product.
It's so
business.
exciting.
Yeah.
And I just feel like we need to really try to upskill our SME business owners in New Zealand that this is not scary and that they should try and learn more about it. And even just using, like you say, using Copilot as your advisor and just talking to it, asking it questions to give you advice on what the next steps might look like.
Will that approach give you competitive advantage and allow you to de-risk what might happen in the market?
That's more around confidence.
That's right.
Getting confidence
That's right.
to be
Exactly,
able to
yeah.
use AI, because I think a lot of the business owners that I am advising, they, I think email is, the level of the tech that they're using.
Yeah. Well, and there's also, those tasks that small business owners operate on, it's actually not their core capability. Creating proposals, doing pricing, reviewing a contract, all of those things, they're not high-end legal activities. They're not high-end commercial activities, but turning some scruffy notes of a quote, that you've done in the back of the ute for a building job and turning that into something that is, really, really clean to go to a client, that should be no more than a 2-minute job now.
That is so, those are great examples of what real business owners in New Zealand can implement into their own business.
Yep.
And how do they go about that? Do they need to come and speak to a firm like SupaHuman, or can they do that themselves?
No, just do. Of course, do reach out for advice if anyone wants any advice.
Yeah.
So firstly, I'm being a little bit disingenuous there. Of course, there is an element of confidence that's required to lean into some of these capabilities. That said, our chief operating officer, he's got grandparents who are in their late 80s. They're using ChatGPT and Anthropic's Claude and going, wow, this is great for recipes and stuff. And they're using the free version. So if you're confident enough to be able to write an email, you're confident enough to have a conversation with an AI service and start to push the boundaries of what it can do, just keep asking, keep pushing. And then, everything else is available to kind of self-taught through YouTube or whatever. But these are not technical, complex pieces. This is a English natural language conversation with some technology to help you get what you need to get to. And then from there, just apply it to your day-to-day business tasks. And the minimum that it will do is just take your time of execution for boring work, up to something that you actually can be pretty proud of.
And no one wants to do boring work, right? So
smart minds doing tedious work is not something that, we're up for.
No, exactly.
Our role is to free those smart minds from that tedious work. And
so talk to me about the smart minds in New Zealand. Do we have enough tech people in New Zealand to drive forward this technological change that we're going to see in the next 10 years?
That's a very good question. And I'm probably, even though I'm on the coalface of this, it's difficult to really, really tell. We are not, if we shift gears in terms of what's happening on a global perspective around AI, there are some very expensive, very smart people in larger countries than ours who are fundamentally building the infrastructure of intelligence. NVIDIA, Meta, OpenAI, Anthropic, all of those large AI companies are spending billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars a year building these capabilities out. New Zealand is not. And it's totally appropriate that it's not, because we don't have the means to, and we don't have the talent to. But that's not a problem, because we're a country that consumes technology. We don't necessarily always build it. And that's evident from how we adopted the cloud. We leveraged Australian data centers to adopt our digital transformation journey. And then eventually we had infrastructure built here. As of only last year, Microsoft opened their first data center here, yet we're 10 years into the cloud transformation journey. So is it a problem that we're not spending billions of dollars building out this stuff? No. So therefore we don't necessarily need the talent to build it out, because we're consuming it. I think the talent gap is less around, do we have the technical talent to do this? I think we do, because we've got quite a good developer community here, and we've got a lot amount of talent coming in from Asia that carries these quite fundamental developer skills to turn problems into solutions for businesses. I don't think we'll necessarily have a gap there. What I do think we've got a talent gap in is in leadership, from enterprise into the mid-market, and in some instances into the small medium business market, to realize that without reimagining how you do work, we're just going to fall behind those organizations that are solving universal problems and delivering them as a service here. You can kind of see, if you can use an international law firm that's competent in New Zealand law that can convey your house for $50 because they've built it on an AI stack,
why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But the same for all kinds of advice that people would never have because they can't afford it through a traditional lawyer. But for $100, yeah, I'll actually get a will written properly, or I will go and seek out divorce guidance. Whereas before you just wouldn't because you couldn't afford it because it was $5,000. So I think it's a leadership talent gap in a sense, which is not necessarily how I've always approached talent. We've always looked at it in terms of, those on the coalface who are doing something. But actually, we do need to put our head above the parapet and go, well, what's happening in all of the industries? From how we run the country through to how we build infrastructure, through to how we train the workforce of the future, and figure out whether we continue to do things as we are, which is human, essentially human driven, or we shift all of the tedious parts of those industries into technology and allow the humans to create the value in, a way that drives more value for the end customer.
Do you have any other key pieces of advice for our SME business owners?
It's not as hard as you would think, and the opportunity is probably greater than you think. The biggest advice that I would give, which is not probably worthy of anything more than, do what you will with it. Advice is kind of just my opinion, is be wary of the headlines. There's always a motive to a headline. If I was kind of look behind it, there's clickbait, and then there's viewers and there's eyeballs on content. And we see paralysis a lot in business because of the headlines that people hear. Inaccuracy is one. Hallucination is another. Robots are going to take all of our jobs. Yep. And that's been exactly the same for every other technology that's come around as well. But there is a core part of those who don't embrace get left behind. And that's a bigger risk in my view. And those headlines can cause a little bit of paralysis. So we encourage deep, meaningful conversations around how this is applied within industry to industrialize these technologies. And if people are open for having those conversations where they're not always looking for an objection, then that's where we want to play. And openly, we're quite quick to qualify out with customers. It can become too hard too quick. Like, we're not here to sell to you. We're here to help you run your business in a more efficient way and create outsized return. And those leaders that get that, they do very well working with SupaHuman. But we're not here to convince people these things are right or wrong. It's a tool available at your fingertips to run your business. And if it's of value, then let's get to work.
So can you tell us about a really cool piece of tech you're working on at the moment?
Yep, so we concluded a project about 6 months ago with a company called Soil and Rock. They're a geotechnical engineering firm out of West Auckland, the largest geotechnical company in Auckland. So they do about 3,000 geotech reports a year. If you've built a house before, you'll have had a geotechnical report done on your property, which essentially means, what's my house built on? Soil, ground, contamination, is there any rock, is there any sand? Is it appropriate to be built on? 3,000 reports a year. On average, it's around 10 hours worth of human labor to produce those reports. So 3,000 times 10, that's a lot of hours. We've taken that from 10 hours down to around 8 to 10 minutes.
Wow.
To produce those reports.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So if you think about that in practicality, well, what is the business objective of Soil and Rock? It's to deliver high quality, accurate output into Auckland Council for the purposes of satisfying building consent. Humans are unfortunately quite slow. We're actually relatively inaccurate, and we don't want to do the work. So in this instance, geotechnical engineers are out there doing their thing, engineering, digging core samples and doing testing. And then our AI service picks up all that information and turns it into a Auckland Council ready, formatted report, ready for peer review and to be signed and shipped to council, which would have taken 10 hours. Their core value proposition at Soil and Rock is to produce those assets, those documents for council, and people want them fast and they want them accurate. And inaccuracy with council is obviously a problem because it kind of, things bounce around and things fail, and that's not good. So when the faster and more accurate you can push content into council, the quicker you can get your house built, and the quicker the tradies can get making money, which is so it's important economic stimulus. So that's a really, 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 really cool one. We're currently working with a large number of private training establishments also in helping deliver vocational education.
That's massive at the moment.
Well, it turns out there's 200,000 active vocational learners at any one time in New Zealand. It's the future workforce, the future hands-on workforce.
Yeah.
And 90% of the cost of running a private training establishment is in people who are doing administration for managing assessments, marking assessments, writing training materials. And that's of no use to the learner necessarily. So we're building AI tools and services to allow the NZQA and the industry standard boards to set the standards, and then we pick up those standards and automatically build assessments, automatically build learning materials specific to you as the learner. So how do you learn? Do you have any learning requirements that would be outside of the normal metrics? English as a second language, for example, and all of these different variables, and delivering you exactly what you need as a learner so you can get competent as quickly as possible. And that's both private in terms of corporate learning and development. So, how do big enterprises train people to, be a flight crew, for example, or work on power lines, all the way through to how do you build a boat, or, how do you prepare meat for sale? All of these things that are vocational. And so there's a huge opportunity there to transform how we create the workforce of the future, which is, from a strategic perspective from SupaHuman, is where we're putting all of our resources now. We see just a big opportunity in how we educate the future of the workforce. It's an interesting one because of the speed. To go back right to when we started this podcast, we were talking about the speed of change. I don't know what the workforce needs to look like in 2 years' time. What skills do we need as a country? What skills do we need as an individual to survive in a workforce? And our education system is not built on a nimble framework. It's built on a human-led framework. We set standards for 5 to 10 years at a time. And actually, well, what vocational skills are we going to need in 3 years' time if we don't know what?
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
I was speaking to university students a couple of months ago, and they said, what is the biggest concern you have for us? And I said to them that when you finish studying, you cannot use what you've just studied because of the rate of change in technology.
Oh, yeah. It's real. It's real. I've always, total segue, I've always recruited talent, not necessarily based on their training, but based on them as a
attitude,
as a human, right?
Yeah.
Grit, determination,
Agreed.
Resilience.
100%.
Just hustle. There's not a degree in hustle. There's not a degree in resilience. And those life experiences, I believe, material in shaping how you operate as a human, regardless of the training that you have. And I mean, I've got kids. You've got kids as well, and yours are a little bit older than mine. But it's hard to give advice on what you apply. You apply your academic or vocational side of your brain to. But I do think the more grit and determination, hustle, and soft skills kids have going into the workforce, or even adults have going into the workforce, I think that's going to be mightily valuable. Because there will be retained humans in organizations that are you're going to want people around you that can think strategically, they can solve problems, they're prepared to think about things that are outside the square, and those don't always come from academics.
Oh, I agree with you. And it must be so much fun getting up for work every morning, reimagining all of these new businesses that are going to be driving the workforce in New Zealand and our businesses over the next 10 years.
I mean, that's why we've put our focus on vocational education and tertiary education to look at the operating system of that environment and how we fuel it with intelligence, from setting standards all the way through to delivering learning. I mean, education's a simple formula, and you teach and you learn and you assess. That's the kind of the triangle of pieces. And if we can increase the learning experience for a learner, and we can teach in a human-led way as opposed to a way that's consuming just textbooks, and there's a human-led element of the teaching, as in more teacher time, and we can remove the overhead of assessing the system, which is essentially how do you mark and how do you create competency metrics and formative and summative assessments, etc. Then there's a huge opportunity to destroy that traditional triangle that we've all come accustomed to of time, quality, and cost. In that education system, we believe we can take the time for administration of the system close to zero, the cost close to zero, and increase that time to value, from months or years in some instances down to dynamic. Have what you want in the hands of the learner right now, based on what they need. And that's not how the education system's built globally. So we're on a mission to transform that.
That's great. On to a fun question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever been given?
That's a good question. The guy that I used to work with, a guy called Mike Foley, he was the CEO at a company that I previously ran. I was a successor to him there. We were very similar in many ways, and I'm a fast thinker, and that's not good. There's a tendency to kind of go a little bit too quickly on certain things, And, he's probably got 25 years on me in terms of age. And he just single thing was just slow down. And I think that's pertinent to not just me, because I'm probably a little bit ADHD, go a bit too hard out. Relationship to this conversation, if you actually think about what you're seeing in relationship to AI and just slow that whole process down and go, well, what could this mean? How could I apply this better? Don't just think about the headlines and then discard these things, or get to a point where you've hit a wall and go and discard it. If we just slow that whole process down and go, well, you're a business owner. You started a business. You went to war to get your first dollar. You went to war to get your first customer. You decided to step out of the norm and not have a job and start a business. This is a really big moment for you to slow down and say, well, there's a really big opportunity here to do things differently. And that could lead to a survive or thrive moment. I'm not trying to make this a circular piece back to my advice, but it has been one of the single things that's got me out of trouble a fair few times, because my instinct is not always right. And in a world where speed seems to be everything, sometimes there's some beauty in the reflection, I think.
I think that's some great advice for our SME business owners. And I just want to thank you so much for taking the time today and joining me on the Fix and Fly podcast. For any of our listeners, we'll make sure that your details are below, and they can contact you and reach out to have some discussions on how you can help them reimagine their business.
More than happy to. Thanks for inviting me on.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching this episode. If you enjoy the Fix and Fly podcast, make sure you like, comment and subscribe, and share with anyone you think will find this useful. We look forward to seeing you next time.